Sean here with BaseMint Comics, and I have a sort of weird, this is not a clickbaity title. I'm not trying to draw anybody into any type of thing. It's just something that was said to me years back at my shop, and it's kind of always like a little bit rattled around in my head as more of a funny, like, anecdotal thing. But I was kind of curious, like, amongst my personal peers in my area or shops, I've been able to, like, ask them this question. But now with this, I was kind of curious to get, like, a broader sense of what people might think. So the question is, what makes someone a comic book fan? And the reason I ask the question is because if you're new to the channel, I am 99.9999999% a Marvel comic fan. I have read DC, and it was actually me reading a DC story that sort of dislodged this in my brain. I have throughout the years read different indie books. But the thing is that they don't ever stick. You know, like I recently read Jason Aaron's Bug Wars, enjoyed it, but I wound up selling it to somebody because it was something where I was like, I'm never going to read this again, more likely. Or if I did want to, I could pick it up in the trade. But so here's the thing. Years back, there was a fellow there who, at my shop, was quite upset that I didn't read indie books, like small indie press books. And he said that I was not a comic book fan, that I wasn't a comic fan. I was just a fan of Marvel, and that he felt that there was a distinction. And I thought this was hilarious. And so I was curious, like, there's plenty of channels out there, right? Where there's cats out there that, like, solely collect, that have been, like, you know, longtime comic book fans, but sold their collections and, you know, only collect Golden Age stuff, right? Or there's people out there that just started out, that literally, like, I'll see channels, and it's exciting to see. As a dude who has been, like, reading comic books for, like, almost 35 years, I think, as early 90s, and that still feels like 10 years ago to me, even though when I really look at it, I'm like, oh my god. I'm starting to get the Reed Richards on the sides, but that's mostly a 3-year-old and not time. But it was sort of weird to me because I was like, he was like adamant of like, well, you're a fan of an intellectual property in that particular universe, but you're not a fan of comics. And I thought that was interesting because, you know, I have, according to my CLZ app, over 16,000 comic books, and the pie chart is solid. The only like caveat in there is a tiny sliver of amalgam books when DC in the mid 90s did the DC versus Marvel crossover, and then they had that month of amalgam books where it was like the you know, the story was that the two universes had combined. But the thing is like, I have plenty of art books. I even have, you know, I mean, these are on the history of comics, not just the history of Marvel, and you know, history of comic books in America, you know, the essential guide to comic books, although, you know, that has a Spider-Man comic on the cover, but there's Superman and the Flash and Supergirl. Anyways, so it was, I think what caught me off guard was more so, it was, first off, it was the seriousness of like the statement, not like it was like in jest, because I'll be completely frank. I have joked years and years amongst my friends that I dislike DC. And hang on, I need to go grab something to go along with this. Okay, so amongst my pals for years, and I'm talking going back to like the very beginning, I have always busted balls about them liking DC and me hating DC. And this is not, it's not real. It's like just part of like our friendship thing. It's like, I'm a Red Wings fan, and it would be like someone being a Blackhawks fan or whatever. Like, I don't actually dislike that sports team, but like, it's just, I suppose, part of the fun. And since I've always been a Marvel guy, I just like to tease my DC buddies that I don't like DC. But that's not really, I don't have any ill will towards DC. What I needed to grab. For instance, those fellas, two of my buddies that are really into DC, they invited me out because they got press passes when the Flash movie came out. They got some like early screening passes. And so they were like, hey, do you want to come and see this? And I did, because I am not a crazy person. I loved the 1989 Michael Keaton Batman film. Thought it was great. And that's the thing. Like, I don't really read that many DC. I do not read any DC comics regularly. I just don't. Every time that I've tried to like dip my toes in, it's sort of like lasted. Like this summer, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So we went to see the Flash movie, and I really liked it. I know that is a controversial hot take, but I liked it. I enjoy being a Marvel fan. I liked going to the movies. And I came home and I told my wife, I was like, man, I really liked it because I had no like horse in that race. I had not been watching 37 films to lead up to that. It was like, I just like, hey, Keaton's Batman is going to show up in this. Check it out. And as a dude who lost his mother at a young age, the story of, I don't know if that's true in the comics, because I've never read any Flash comics. But the story of like him trying to fix the death of his mother hit me in the feels. So we made plans to see the new Superman movie, okay? And so my sister made me a shirt to wear there, but you can see. And it took him a second to figure out what it said, and I thought that was hilarious. But again, it was all in good fun. It was not meant to be serious or taken seriously. And I thoroughly, I loved that movie. Loved it. That actually made me go out and start picking up Superman Unlimited. But again, like, it was one of those things where I was like reading it and I was like, man, books are like $4.99, $5.99 now. And I'd rather get some other stuff from the universe that I know. So I dropped it. Again, it's not because it was bad. It was not because I wasn't necessarily enjoying it. I was just like, in the long run, I am reading this right now because I'm hyped up on this movie, but it isn't really going to last. So, that's sort of where it is. So, the other day, a couple videos back, I talk about like how I found a relative through a letters page that had a big collection, and he let me help him sell it. But in the process, I was able to take some things from it that I was interested in keeping for my own personal collection. One of the things that I held on to was DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths. Okay, so that's a complete 12-issue run of DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths. And the other night, a couple days back, was there's a Instagram page like On This Day in Comics or something like that I follow. And the other day they posted that it was like the anniversary, whatever round number, 40 years probably since that came out. And so I was like, oh, hey, Kismet, I'll read, like, I've got this sitting here, I'll read it. And so I read it, and I love George Perez. He's on my Mount Rushmore of comic book artists. And so I read it, and I was like, this is good. It's good. Now, for me, like, I don't think there's an emotional weight in this story for people who have been like ride or die DC fans, and because there's a lot of characters in there where I was like, I have no idea who this is, and so it doesn't really resonate for me. And there were a couple times there where I was like, man, if these were all Marvel characters, this would probably be hitting all the spots for me, but I've got no connection to this. Still good. Like, I can objectively, as a comic book fan, be like, I get it. I understand why DC fans would be totally into this. But for me, I was like, because there was a part of me that was like, oh, should I keep this? Like, I don't know what's going on upstairs with the family. Should I keep this? And I was like, I love George Perez's art. And so it's kind of like, or do I wind up like putting this in the hands of a DC fan that doesn't have it, that would absolutely like read it and reread it again? So there's that. So that's probably what I'll wind up doing, because like otherwise this is just going to sit in a box, and probably like I don't think I'm ever going to read it again. And so that's probably what I'll do. But that doesn't, I don't know. Maybe this wasn't super thought out. But the point is like, I guess maybe I'd never been gate kept before. And like, I just found it interesting that a dude was like, legitimately like, because you're not out there picking up indie books or whatever, and I don't know, maybe he like made an indie book and he was pissed off that I wasn't getting it or whatever, but I just thought it was a weird, like, I have been picking up comics regularly since 93. I mean, that's a pretty long time. So I think, even though I am loyal to one particular company, and it's like, it's not like I'm like out here like waving a Marvel, I like the characters. Like, I've enjoyed the history of it, and like when I do dip my toes into other things, I'm sort of just like, this isn't necessarily like when it comes to DC, it's like, I clearly, like, I know, like, it's weird because the spot that I pick to do these, you get like part of the bookshelves, but there's more all around. I'm standing mostly in front of toys, which I love, but anyways, there's a lot here. I'm actually standing in front of short boxes full of comics as well on my little comic book island right here. So I was just curious, as far as an audience goes, what people thought. Like, I mean, because I imagine, like, if someone's like, oh, I've got this short box and I'm just getting into comics, it's not like I'm like, you have to be here for this many years or get this many series on a weekly basis to consider yourself a comic book fan. That just felt weird. And I was sort of curious, now that I'm doing this, I was like, what do people, like, what do you think constitutes a comic book fan? Like, I like Star Trek, right? But I am mainly a original series guy. I've only just now started watching the Next Gen, and I'm like 4.5 seasons in. But if someone were like, hey, are you a fan of Star Trek? I'd be like, yes. I wouldn't be like, well, technically, I'm almost there. I have to finish, that doesn't make any sense to me. And like, I like Star Wars, but I have not seen any Star Wars stuff since like maybe the second season of The Mandalorian. Like, I don't watch a lot of TV, so I don't have I didn't know it was a prerequisite to watch every piece of, you know, stuff out there to have to consider yourself a fan of that. So I was just curious what everyone else like. What do you think makes a person a fan of something? Anyways, that was the rant that reading Crisis on Infinite Earths brought up for me. So there's that. Let's see. I'm going to kick it over to Corner Box Classics. Now that I'm done with my "Am I actually a comic book fan?" rant. I think I am. But there's one dude out there that's like, he's not. And that's okay. All right, so now that I am over my weird rant that was unearthed by reading DC Crisis on Infinite Earths, I am ready to get into Corner Box Classics. So there are 3 books this week that I would have pedaled up to the shop the week of March 23rd, 1982 to pick up. So the first up is Marvel 2-in-1, The Thing and Human Torch, The Last Word, released March 23rd, 1982, written by David Anthony Kraft, pencils by Alan Kupperberg, inks by Chick Stone, letters by Joseph Rosen, and colors by Don Warfield. When I got to this issue, I was a little bummed out because I was like, part of the charm of 2-in-1 and team up is not putting the character with someone that they are normally around. So I think that the Torch and Thing teaming up is a little bit of a I get that a lot. I get that in the Fantastic Four all the time. These guys live together. They're best pals. Anyways, so it opens up with this woman like frantically running to the Baxter building, but she gets stopped by this woman in the alley right before she gets there. And then, it cuts to the inside of the Baxter building where, Ben and Johnny live because, why do you need to team up between the two of them? Because they're living together. Anyways, typical Ben and Johnny stuff happens, which is always good. But then in kind of a bum out note, like Johnny is all of a sudden like, oh, hey, I just remembered there was this really panicked woman who called that said she was going to stop by the Baxter building. And that was a little weird where I was just like, I know he's like the hothead of the group or whatever, but it just felt so like if some woman called in a panic and was looking for the Fantastic Four's help, you don't think he'd be like trying to give Ben Grimm the old hot foot. He'd be like a little bit more focused in on like, hey, there's stuff going on. But what are you going to do? Then what makes it even worse is he like leaves the Baxter building and like sees this woman hurt in the street getting picked up by an ambulance. And he's like, whatever. Hope that lady's okay. And then he sees some blonde gal going into the park. And so he decides to follow her. Ben thankfully goes and helps the woman who mentions this thing called the Word. And since the title of the story is The Last Word, here we go. So they go and figure out that they get like contacted by Nick Fury, who's like, hey, there's this guy. And it's weird, dude. It's so weird. Some of these books are so great, and some of these books are weird. And this one falls directly into the weird category, because he's basically explaining like, hey, there's this cat who has this basically cult, and his daughter was paralyzed by She-Hulk. This happened in editor's note, She-Hulk issue number 10. I don't jump in on She-Hulk until the John Byrne years. With Sensational She-Hulk, I did not get any Savage She-Hulk. I think I might have one issue, like in a rando box of like, but I think we've discussed this before in Corner Box Classics when she shows up in like an issue of Dazzler. It was an issue of Dazzler where I was like, this is technically my first run-in with She-Hulk because I don't own any of her other appearances. So anyways, basically like Nick Fury is like, hey, this guy's got a cult. I sent a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. I haven't heard back from any of them. So I need you two to go, check this out. And so they're like, well, what else are we going to do? So they go to do this. And of course, as they're driving there, they get attacked. But it's Johnny and Ben. So they handle it the best they can until they get hit with some knockout gas. Rocky Hyde and flame powers aren't going to stop that from happening. And then the blonde-haired gal from the park shows up and lays the wall up on Ben Grimm. And so then they are brought into this dude's house. Turns out this is his daughter, this character. And he basically explains, like, how he was working for, like, a dictionary company and found out that words had power, which, yes, they do. And then he became a disc jockey. It's dude. 1982 comics. Do I love every minute of it? Yes. Is it weird? Also, yes. Okay, so I also want to bring up this panel here because I don't know if you can see it clearly, but Ben has a human mask on, which I think is hilarious. Like, you can see in this one, it's like legitimately like one of those, like, just over your face, like, can still see the rocky back of his head. It is then revealed why they did that is because he has them go work in a mine, and he doesn't want them, Ben Grimm, freaking out the other guys in the mine. Why they're working in a mine. There is a mine collapse at one point. They try to help the guys out of there. Eventually, when they do get out of the mine, Johnny goes full Nova because they've got kind of like collars that are sapping their strength, injecting drugs into them so that they can't fight their way out of this. They eventually do. And the entire time, this character, the blonde gal's name is Ultima, and she was the one that was crippled by She-Hulk in issue number 10. But her dad's words and the power of these words have somehow cured her. I don't know. Comics, man. I love it. So then Ben decides, like, oh, I'm just going to give this guy the backhand. And once he gets knocked out, his daughter has no, like, abilities anymore because she's only getting them through this dude's words. And that's when he realizes, like, oh no, what have I done? And it once again is like sort of like, well, this was kind of crazy. Like, you had people trapped in a mine, like SHIELD agents, 2 members of the Fantastic Four, and then at the very end the dude just gets like manhandled by Thing, and then is like, oh, I should probably take care of my daughter now and not do crazy shit. And I just think that's weird. It's one of the charming things about Marvel 2-in-1 is there is just like absolutely crazy stuff going on, and then they're like, oh, well, that got wrapped up. Wait to see who he's going to team up with next month. This will be fun. So that was Marvel 2-in-1, number 89, from March 23rd, 1982. Pretty good stuff, if you ask me. So then, up next would be Dazzler, number 17, The Angel and the Octopus, released March 23rd, 1982, written by Danny Fingeroth, with pencils by Frank Springer, inks by Vince Colletta, letters by Janice Chang, and colors by Don Warfield. This, again, I think I say this every time that I talk about a Dazzler book. I have read the Dazzler series now 3 or 4 times. I love it. It's soap opera. It's part music, which is right up my alley. Like, it's, she just wants to be a singer. She doesn't want to mess with super heroics and all this type of stuff. But this issue moderately irritated me for one main reason, which I will get into it. So Dazzler and her new fella are out on a street corner, kind of wrapping up their evening kissing, and they get attacked by some youths who don't realize, like, you're messing with the Dazzler. And so she flicks on a radio and then easily handles them, but this kind of ruins the night. And so she's like, the fella splits and she goes back to her apartment, and that's all well and good. So then she gets, she goes to see her manager, and basically, like, she's got a job doing background vocals for this record. And so she goes to the studio to record the background vocals, and it turns out to be their background vocals for Bruce Harris, who she was just, like, in recent issues, she was just on tour with this dude, opening up for him, and Dazzler was outshining this guy, so he kicked her off the tour. So she thinks it's hilarious, like, in this, like, oh, hey, like, little does this dude know who just kicked me off of his tour that I'm now singing background vocals on his record. So kind of an interesting thing there. As she is leaving the studio, she bumps into a creepy Warren Worthington who, like, just kind of, like, bumps into her and then shows her a magazine with his face on it, which, you know, I mean, I guess probably works. So she tries to get away from him. And this is where it bothers me. This is where, like, my huge X-Men fandom starts to irritate me when I read X-Men characters written at this time period by anyone that isn't named Chris Claremont, because this is not at all how Warren acts in the X-Men continuity. And then all of a sudden he's in Dazzler, and he's, like, literally stalking her throughout this, like, chasing her down because he wants to date with her. And so she doesn't know who he is. He eventually pulls off the coat, takes off his shirt, lets the wings loose, and she's like, oh, you're the Angel. Still creepy, which 100% is. And so he starts talking about how he's been, like, thinking about her ever since issue number 1 of Dazzler, when all the superheroes came out to see Dazzler play. Never mind the fact that Warren has been in a relationship with Candy Southern for years. Like, years, since the 60s. I was shocked the first time that I read Silver Age X-Men stuff and realized how quickly Candy Southern was on the scene. Great character, by the way. It's a shame what happens to her in the 90s. So then she's like, I don't care, dude. I don't care that you're the Angel. I'm not interested. And so then she goes out on a date with her fella. And so then all of a sudden all of a sudden the waiter is at the date is Warren. Like, he's just shown up at this, which again, it's super creepy, dude. It's super creepy. And so Allison's like, all right, date's over. We're getting out of here because this is insane. So then she, like, goes back to her apartment. And this, like, I'm getting so mad at Warren while I'm reading this last night. So irritated. Then I start getting pissed at Allison because the guy that she's with, he's not getting upset that she's not, like, that Warren's pursuing her. Which, I mean, it just good for this dude for not being, like, at all jealous or intimidated by a winged superhero millionaire coming after his gal, right? He's just like, oh, this is hilarious. What a weirdo, right? Which should be but she starts to, this is where I'm like, Allison, you lost me. Like, I was 100% on your side. But then she's kind of bummed that this dude isn't jealous. That's a red flag, Allison. That is a red flag. So she sends that dude home. She's like, she's like, I just want him to be a little jealous. And so she sends him home. And this is where it gets, like, triple creepy. Because as this dude leaves, who do you see in the background? Freaking Warren. Flying around her apartment. And so then he pops up at her window, okay? And she's like, well, this is creepy. But he eventually charms her. And I'm like, Allison, you suck. Warren sucks. Everybody in this situation sucks. Except for, and I can't think of his name right now for the life of me, but Allison's red-haired, mustachioed lawyer boyfriend. I'm trying to think if, he is, Ken. Yeah. Everybody but Ken. It's pissing me off in this issue. So then she decides, like, she has just booted this dude from her apartment after their date, okay? And decides to leave with Warren. So, sorry, Allison. You're the worst. So they're flying around the city, okay? And I will give them this. Frank Springer, this panel right here, that Frank Springer knocks it out of the park. Look at that. That's awesome. They kiss. These idiots kiss. And so then she takes him back to his apartment. Allison goes on a weird talk show with her band, Beaver, her drummer. And then at the talk show, she leaves. And who's there in his cool car but Warren Worthington to be like, hey, let's get out of here. So like as they're driving around, they see Dr. Octopus tearing up the place, okay? And so Warren's like, sweet, let's go. And rips off his clothes, got his costume on. There's a Warren Worthington. There's actually this right here is the costume that he's wearing in this scene. So he rips off his clothes to reveal that costume, and she's like, Dazzler's like, I don't want to do this. I do not want to chase after Dr. Octopus. This sucks. Get me as far away from Dr. Octopus as you possibly can. Like, she is not about the superhero business. She winds up getting like entangled in his octopus arms. You know, the battle continues. Warren gets knocked off the building, and eventually, like, Dazzler has to fight Dr. Octopus, which they do. They succeed, and Allison's like, yeah, no, I don't like you got me the once with the flying me around the city, all romantic like in the great Frank Springer panel, but I am not interested. You just drug me into a fight with Dr. Octopus. I am not interested. I'm going to stick with Ken. And so does Warren Worthington take this rejection like a man? No. He creeps out and notices that private investigator Jessica Drew has been trying to figure out who Allison Blair's mother is, per her request, for the last few issues. And he sees the note and he's like, you know what? I'm going to use my millions to find her mom. And when I do that, surely she will be interested in me. And then the issue ends with Absorbing Man showing up. So, I love Warren Worthington. Think he's a great character. Super interesting. One of my favorites of the original X-Men. And total creep in Dazzler. Absolutely. Total creep. What a bum out. So that was Dazzler number 17. It was a great issue. Obviously. Some killer Frank Springer art. You got, drama and romance and music stuff and Dr. Octopus tearing stuff up. But the idiocy of Allison Blair and Warren Worthington on display in this issue was a huge bummer. So up next, what would have been my favorite book of March 23rd, 1982, and I'm guaranteeing pretty much everyone else's favorite book if I were to time travel back then and ask people, because this book is firing on all cylinders. It is Daredevil, number 184, Good Guys Wear Red. Written and penciled by Frank Miller, with inks and colors by Klaus Janson and letters by Joseph Rosen. Seriously, I have read the Miller stuff before, and since we're in Corner Box Classics, look at how killer that corner box is. So awesome stuff. Anyways, real side note, this issue should not be as pricey as it is when trying to buy it just because it's Daredevil holding a gun. That's a dumb reason. Anyways, I can't... Everyone knows. Like, everyone knows that Frank Miller's Daredevil is awesome. There is no way in shape or form that I am going to break some new ground during this discussion and have you be like, oh, I never wanted to check out Frank Miller's Daredevil before, but you've convinced me. I might convince you to check out that issue of Daredevil, or Dazzler number 17. But if you have never read the Frank Miller Daredevil stuff, just please do it. Please. It's so good. It's so good. It's like moody in all the right ways. So the last issue, there was a guy who was on trial for murder because he's a bad drug dealer. And something happened with that dude, but then, Oh man, I gotta, it's been a month. I gotta keep some notes. It's probably been longer than that, actually, since Christmas. Anyways, there was a dude that then got fingered as the guy that killed this kid with the OD, but his heart was letting Matt Murdock know that he was not the guy. Like, didn't skip a beat when he claimed his innocence. And so Matt Murdock, like, took the case. It was like, I'm going to defend this guy. And Punisher was like, you are, and was, like, cleaning his guns and was like, I'm going to go kill Matt Murdock. So that's where we're at. And it's, you know, it opens up with this dude basically, like, this creepy drug dealer dude basically, like, eating spaghetti and, like, talking about how he's got this sweet lawyer who's going to get him off. There is a, his name's Hogman. There is a, you know, he mentions that, then we cut to the other side of the building, and that's where Frank is with his sniper rifle about to take this dude out, and then we get the title page, and that fantastic, like, I love when they do, like, the lightly colored hero. There's a couple panels in Uncanny X-Men where they do this with Nightcrawler's bamfing, where he's, like, knocking out Hellfire Club guards, and it's so great. Or, like, you'll get Spider-Man swinging off of things, and, like, you know, he's in multiple parts of the panel, but, like, they're shaded, colored lighter. It's just such a cool, I love it. So they get into a quick fight. Frank splits, and Daredevil is, like, left to himself in this, realizing that Frank got away. Then it cuts to Heather Glenn signing a bunch of paperwork for her company, and she runs across this thing called Atreus Plastics and is like, what is this? And the skeezy dude that's making her sign the paperwork about her company, or her father's company, or family company, is like, oh, you know, that's nothing, don't worry about it, just keep signing your name, which is your clue as an audience member to be like, oh, there must be something going on there, and that's probably going to swing back around at some point. So then we cut to Daredevil in court, and he's basically like, my guy's not the killer. And you see, like, one of the kids who, like, had to deal with the drug thing, and a particular coach guy looked kind of stunned. So you're like, oh, maybe it's that guy. So then Matt has a tip as to what's going on with these guys. So he's at the office, like, waiting for this phone call. And Heather winds up calling. And there's this really great, it's a great page, again, that is split by the telephone wire for the kids out there. That was the thing that used to attach the phone to the wall. They don't have those anymore. But it was a great artistic choice there to do this. And he's talking to Heather, and she's like, hey, we need to talk. Like, we have to talk. Matt wants to get married to her. You know, he pulled out the proposal at the end of one of the last issues. And he's like, hey, hang on, there's another call on the other line. I'm going to have to let you go. And Heather eventually just splits and leaves. Because there's obviously been some tension building between her and Matt. And, like, she's sort of sick and tired of dealing with it. Matt. All right, sorry about that. There was a crisis with the little guy upstairs that needed all hands on deck. He was getting tickled and got... ran his back into the corner of a coffee table, so he was bummed out about that. Anyways, okay, so Murdock goes and runs into the teacher who is all hopped up on drugs and starts fighting Murdock. Murdock subdues him, and but he's trying to figure out, like, who gave this guy the drugs, because he thought he was the guy, and there's no way this dude would have, like, jacked himself up with all this stuff. So, you know, it then cuts to Hogman is now the kid who was testifying against him is begging him for heroin. And so he's basically like, hey, don't testify against me and I'll give you the drugs, kid. And the kid agrees. Hogman gives him the drugs. And of course, you know, he takes the drugs and immediately ODs as Hogman admits that he didn't cut the heroin. And therefore, now there's a kid who's not going to testify against him. So they're waiting for the kid to show up. Obviously, he's not going to show. And so Hogman gets off. and in front of this kid who's been looking up to Matt to try to put these guys away because his sister was one of the people who died from the drugs, he overhears Hogman basically be like, hey, thanks for getting me out of another trial, and just so you know, I did it. And slips, like, really awfully, like, slips Murdoch some cash, a little extra something for him, and the kid sees this and storms off. So then it cuts to later on, Daredevil finds him and starts beating the crap out of him, or threatens to beat the crap out of him, and Hogman's like, you wouldn't do that to me, you're not that type of guy, I've been paying attention, you're not that type of guy, and you're a real bleeding heart, and you wouldn't punch out a guy just because you felt like, especially a guy with such a delicate heart condition, that he needs a pacemaker. And, like, this is the clue to Matt as to why he registered that he was innocent, was because the pacemaker would regulate his heartbeat. And therefore, it read to Matt's radar sense that he wasn't guilty, even though he was. So, Matt goes to, like, check on the kid's parents, the one that was, like, kind of looking up to him, whose daughter had passed, and that kid has stolen his father's gun and is going to kill Hogman. So, kid shows up, Hogman shows up, blah, 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 and then, right as the kid's about to pull the trigger, thankfully or not, dependent on how you feel about this, Frank Castle is there to do the deed. So he takes care of Hogman's, like, assistant guy. Hogman grabs the gun from the kid, pulls it up to the kid's head like he's going to kill him. Frank obviously, hits him in a couple places to disarm him, and then goes in for the kill, and Matt stops him, hence the Matt with a gun, because Matt winds up shooting the Punisher, and the kid is about to kill him but isn't able to do it, and so he eventually testifies against Hogman and is able to put him away. But I think that the damage is the kid is obviously affected by all of this that he's seen, and even after the verdict kind of just sulks away, which is a bum out. And then the last page is back at Glen Industries, and Heather is now searching out what Atreus Plastics is, and she asks the question, what's their business with Glen Industries? And the answer to that question is they're a manufacturer of plastique, high-intensity explosive, purpose undetermined. And so that's the end of the issue, is clearly Heather Glen's father's company is working with a place that is making plastic explosives, which obviously a huge bum out. Those are the 3 books that I would have picked up if I had pedaled up to the shop March 23rd, 1982. I enjoyed all 3 of them. Daredevil still a cut above the rest. And so that does it for this issue of Cornerbox Classics. If you like what I have going on at the channel, please, subscribe, like, and if you dug any of those issues or disagree with my feelings towards any of them, please let me know in the comments. If you, I would love to hear what everybody thinks about, like, what constitutes a comic book fan. Not because I am calling that out, but because I am just curious, like, taking the temperature of the room, because I think that's such a weird question or statement when it got made to me. That just because I put my comic dollar towards one universe, that I was somehow, not a fan of the medium in general. Weird. Anyway, so I'm curious what you think. Do you think, are you on the side of the fella at my shop? Or do you think a person who just, like, last Wednesday went to the store and picked up 1 book, are they a comic book fan? I think so. So I'm curious what everyone else thinks. So there is that, and let's see. I will be back this Wednesday, New Comic Book Wednesday, with a ride up to the shop, and then I am slowly but surely making my way through here, de-Christmasing it, so that I can do a room tour. So there's that to look forward to sooner rather than later. So that about wraps it up for this, and I wanted to thank you for watching and taking this ride with us. Bye.